The Bible isn't just a book of random stories. It's 66 different books that come together to tell one story. An incredible one. About God's love for us. And now for an amazing story inspired by the book of John. Chapters 18 to 20.
Jesus once told his followers that not even the actions of a single sparrow were outside God's watch, which means he cares even more about people, about every single person who has ever lived. As Jesus approached his final Passover meal, ready to lay down his life for his friends, a sparrow may have darted down from the eaves of the home and slipped into the rafters of the upper room. There, the sparrow would have heard Jesus share his heart with his friends over the meal, and perhaps with a swish of its brown tail feathers, the sparrow followed when they left.
In a little while, you will no longer see me. Then after a little while, you will see me. Now it's your time to be sad. But I will see you again. Then you will be full of joy.
Jesus and his friends traveled the narrow streets to a garden across the Kidron Valley. A bird's eye view showed Jesus praying for his friends beneath an olive tree, while soldiers and officials approached the garden, flaming torches and swords in hand. The mob was led by Judas, one of Jesus' friends who had chosen to betray his Lord for 30 silver coins, and Jesus knew exactly what Judas had done. Calmly, he went out to meet the mob.
Who do you want?
Jesus of Nazareth!
I am he.
The whole crowd with Judas fell to their knees. Jesus gestured to his friends who straggled behind him.
If you are looking for me, then let these men go.
Jesus' friend Peter couldn't take it any longer. He leapt forward, awkwardly swinging a sword.
You can't take him!
Peter's sword slashed, cutting off the ear of the high priest's servant.
Put your sword away. Shouldn't I drink the cup of suffering the Father has given me?
Jesus allowed the soldiers to tie him up and haul him away to stand trial before the religious leaders. The disciples scattered, but Peter and John slunk along behind. The sparrow, drawn to the lights, would have followed. Perched on a window ledge, the sparrow could see Jesus standing inside between the mob and the high priest. False witnesses told lies about Jesus who did not say a single word in his own defense. At last, the high priest demanded,
Are you the Messiah?
I am.
He says he's God. That's worthy of death.
Confused by all the shouting, the sparrow hopped off the ledge onto the rough cobblestones of the courtyard. There he found Peter warming his hands by a small fire. Now earlier that evening, Peter had claimed that he would die for Jesus. But when bystanders got curious about him...
Are you one of those men who followed Jesus?
Who, me? No way!
3 times Peter denied Jesus, and after the 3rd time, just as Jesus had predicted, the sparrow would not have been fond of roosters. With a twitter of wings, he took flight. Below, he could see soldiers leading Jesus toward the palace of the Roman governor, Pilate. The sparrow darted down, hoping for crumbs from the royal kitchen. But what he witnessed took away his appetite. Pilate wanted to pardon Jesus.
I find no reason to charge him.
But the mob screamed for punishment. So, Pilate ordered soldiers to whip Jesus.
Look, here he is. He's not guilty of doing anything wrong.
Only one thing would satisfy the crowd.
Crucify him! Crucify him!
Pilate didn't want to make the Jews angry, so he gave in. He handed Jesus over to the soldiers, who marched Jesus right out of the city.
Crucify him!
The sparrow would have been compelled to follow into the rising sun, and he flew high over the city wall, swooping and circling until he spotted the final destination of the mob, a hill called Golgotha. The sparrow lit on some heavy beams of wood, but quickly fluttered up again as soldiers grabbed the rough wood. They nailed Jesus to the beams and raised him up on the cross between 2 common thieves. Dizzy and tired in the growing heat of the day, the sparrow settled to the dirt in the shade of several weeping women and Jesus' friend, John. Though Jesus was in great pain, he saw his mother's grief. He told her,
Dear woman, here is your son.
to John, he said,
Here is your mother.
Jesus had completed his mission. He was willing to face a death he didn't deserve because he cared so much about his friends and his enemies. With a final gasp, he cried out.
It is finished.
Darkness fell. The earth shook. Huge rocks split wide open. The sparrow would have seen enough. He launched himself into the sky as far as his weary wings would take him, and he swept through the air until he spotted a green garden with a running brook. And then he swooped down and nestled himself into the branches of an ancient olive tree. Later, as the sparrow foraged for seeds in the cool of the evening, 2 men arrived. They carried Jesus' body, wrapped in strips of linen, and placed it inside a cave. The sparrow darted closer to see, but quickly retreated as soldiers arrived to roll a massive stone over the mouth of the tomb. Over the next days, the sparrow rested in the garden while soldiers stood guard outside the tomb. The day seemed long, empty. Though the garden was peaceful, the sparrow couldn't settle down, couldn't sleep through the long, dark night. But on the 3rd day, as the sun crept over the edge of the horizon, the earth shook once again. Sudden light blinded the sparrow. When his sharp eyes could see again, the guards had fled. The stone was rolled away. The tomb was empty. God had raised Jesus from the dead. Jesus appeared first to his friend, Mary.
Mary.
Teacher.
Above them, in the branches, that sparrow would have sung his heart out. Jesus was alive again, and he cared so deeply for every person God ever created, he entered into death and defeated it for all time.